All right, my name's John DeRosa. I fly out of the Chicago area at Soaring Glider Port, and my presentations, if you ever have seen them either online or seen them in person, because I've spoken at several different conventions, they tend to have everything in the kitchen sink in them. Every time I grab a piece of information, I put it in the presentation. It's 111 slides. We're not going to go through all of them. So I'm going to skip through quite a bit of stuff. You may just see something flash by. So let's get going. So why do we have these things? To me, it's pretty obvious. Having one of these devices can save your life. We're all going to, if you're flying at all in glider, somewhere along the line, you're going to land out somewhere. It's probably going to be just fine. It's going to be a safe and cozy landing. It's going to be the ready for harvest landing. I like that shot. It's going to be the beautiful sunset. That's me out in Nephi, and the muddy and sticky land out. But there was a land out that didn't go so well. And I want to preamble everything I'm going to say, saying it's important to have some device with you. A friend of mine was flying out of Tonopah with Hal, actually. Hal, what's his last name? Woodruff, and he ended up landing out, not Hal, but this guy, I won't mention his name, about 25 nautical miles south. And he was getting low, and it's not particularly hospitable land out territory, but he found a road, and he did the right thing. He went all the way down the road, turned around, and went back again. It's still showing that, right? Okay, I'm going to keep checking. And landed, and that's the road he landed on. There's an actual picture of the road he landed on. He took that picture after he landed. You can see the brush. You can see the cactus back there. Well, he hit something with a wingtip and landed upside down. He got trapped in there for about an hour before he was able to extricate himself because his hand was underneath the wing. But he was prepared. He had a Garmin inReach, and he had an Acer personal locator beacon. I see somebody taking a picture of this. It is online. If you look at the bottom of each and every slide is the link to where all my presentations are. So in any case, he ended up, I think it took 4 hours for the people to show up to take him out of there, and it was 3 or 4 ambulance rides before he ended up in Las Vegas. I mean, it was quite a thing for him, but he was okay. He did break a bone, but that was about it. And he has a presentation. If you look, I won't mention his name, but if you look on the SSA website for their webinars, you'll find this one. It says something like the day I almost killed myself. So the devices we're going to cover, ELTs, emergency locator beacons, are the oldest thing in the trio of things we're going to talk about. Personal locator beacons, PLBs, and personal satellite communicators. I came up with that phrase. That's why it's in quote, because all the manufacturers have different names for what their equipment is. So let's talk just a little bit about ELTs. They're triggered by typically a crash, but also a hard landing. And unfortunately, that gives them some false triggers. They have a homing signal on 121.5. You're going to hear that a lot because several of the devices have that. The modern ELTs, and that's what we want to get to. If you ever get an ELT, get the latest and greatest. So the original ALT came out in about 73. They're low wattage, 0.2 of a watt. Homing beacon, but they're prohibited now, so you can't sell them. The next model, which are still can be sold and bought, still 121.5. There are some false signals, so the SATSAR satellite system that the U.S. government runs was actually monitoring 121.5 until 2009, and then said there's just too much garbage. So the better thing, if you got to get one, is the latest ELT models that have a 5-watt transmitter on 406, and they encode GPS into their signal going up the satellite. So The satellite system is called COSPAR, which is actually a USSR term, not Russia, USSR. It's that old. SARSAT is search and rescue satellite. So I'll just keep using SARSAT. Here's some information about ELTs, about testing them and how often you have to have them inspected and whatnot. We'll keep going. We're going to get into the next thing. So I had a PLB, a personal locator beacon, for a long time. You don't turn them on at all until you need them, kind of thing. They don't do any tracking. There's multiple different models of them. I had the Acer Rescue Link, which is the more expensive of the bunch. They use the governmental SARSAT satellite system. They broadcast on 406 megahertz. And in the latest models, they encode at 406 megahertz your Latin log, which is important. There's this is some of the overview. Let's go through just a couple items. There's no subscription fee. You pay for it, you can use it. There's no external power because the battery is going to last for 5 years before you have to replace it. And it's good for 28 hours once you do use it. It has a built-in strobe that's visual and infrared, and that was a saving thing for that landout I showed you, that bad landout, because he didn't get rescued until that night, and they saw somebody flew over and saw the infrared strobe and also the lit strobe. So they're very nice. They're not very big. You can see in the lower right-hand corner that they're fairly small. And here's a couple of views of it, satellite. Here's the newest thing that's come out, the very latest models. One of the issues with PLBs is they didn't have any way for you to know that the signal got through. Now they do. The latest models have this RLS, the return link surface. So it just go through the steps of it. There's your PLB. You're sending it a signal up to the satellites. The satellites downlink. Then it goes over to the mission control centers, and we'll get into the mission control on either side of the fence, either the PLBs or the other emergency locator devices. They then, once the response is happening, the actual putting a helicopter in the air, whatever it might be, then they put a signal back uphill that goes back down to the PLB, the latest and greatest ones, this RLS system. That's also what happens at the latest ELTs, emergency locator beacons, that also do the 406 with the encoded GPS. All right, so the next thing we're going to talk about is what is more popular than either of the ones we talked about before. I do like PLBs. They're a one-trick pony, and you don't have to charge them up. You don't have to worry about them. You just use them. So we're into the personal satellite communicators, we're going to call it. There's a price tag that I'm showing here so you know how much we're talking about. I am going to bring up a number of slides at the end, which is going to take all the different models, including the PLBs, and compare and contrast them. So you'll be able to see which one has better feature set, the cost of these, because they all have a service contract that's necessary for them to work. I'm not going to talk about the Garmin, the bigger Garmin InReach SE. I added, because the Spot Gen 4 doesn't have a display, I wanted to talk about the Spot X, because it has a keyboard, it's pretty handy, and a large display, and would be the easiest of the three to use. The Garmin InReach does have the capability, as I know, Chris, you used, is to type out basically one character at a time, or using your cell phone. But I don't want to rely on a cell phone, so I want a device that I can type out a message and get a response back. Here's what's going on, when are you going to be here, that sort of thing.
The PLBs don't have a contract, do they?
They do not. PLBs, the personal locator beacons, are, once you buy it, there are no charges. You register it on the NOAA website, and away you go.
Pay for it with federal tax dollars.
Yeah,
That's right. So just a little idea of the difference in sizes. I did have the original one on the left. I went to the smaller one, and now I have the InReach Mini. So full disclosure, I'm not trying to sell anything, just to give you an idea of the sizes. There's some other stuff that's showing up, these what are called messengers. Garmin calls them satellite communicators. Spot calls them satellite tracking devices. And basically it's so you can not be in the wilderness and and still being able to text everybody in your contact list, which is not what we're going after. There's no display. There's one very small display in the Garmin InReach, but there's without a phone, you can't really use these effectively. And phones batteries are known to die in a critical point that you can use the ones I've talked before for a long period of time when they're freshly charged. And one point on that is if you're flying with these things, always have a way of using your ship's battery to power up your emergency device. Build a cable for yourself. All right, so this is just a little bit about the different systems. If you look in the middle, right in here, there's two different satellite systems being used, the Iridium system and the Global Star system, and that's the Starlink system that you've seen all the satellites going over. And they all talk to a non-governmental commercial GEOS organization to alert and bring in the troops, the rescue services. We're going to talk about that a little bit too. So let's talk about the individual ones. I may be going too fast, but I only got 45 minutes and we had some hiccups. We're still good here. All right, don't breathe. So again, the Spot Gen 4, you see a picture of it in somebody's hand so you can get an idea. This is not to scale. And the Spot X, which is significantly larger, but not particularly huge. So I've noted here some of the things that it doesn't do is comparing it to PLB. There's no homing beacon, no 121.5. If the Civil Air Patrol is coming out to find you, in this case, all they're going to have is Latin long. And I've heard stories of they didn't know how to convert the Latin long from one style to another, and it took them a while. A homing signal may be a good thing. It doesn't have a strobe. It has text messaging, but it's only pre-configured messages that you do ahead of time. And then you press a button to send particular messages. Underneath the orange strip there is your SOS button. So you do not get, as far as I know, any message back that says, yes, we've got your signal. I may be wrong at that. I did read the manual. I didn't see any reference to that. There's no way to externally charge it, so it relies on AAA batteries. Bring along a second set. It has no Bluetooth pairing, so you can't use your cell phone to be able to send messages through it. Here's some of the costs. There is a monthly cost and usually an activation fee. It's down at the bottom, $30 for each of these. A lot of the systems, and we're going to line these all up with all the other services so you can see it in one or two slides. There's some that have but not all, that have a flex system where you can you can turn it off for 6 months of the year and use it for the 6 months where you're going to be flying in hostile territory. But the basic system is 12 months, and the flex basic allows you 1 month minimum at a time. And there's an extra fee for turning that on. The Spot X is very similar from the green and the red that I pointed out. It does text messaging, and it can do any characters. You've got a full keyboard there. It uses micro USB, so it can be externally powered, and it has Bluetooth to pair with your phone. A little bit more expensive, and all the prices that I'm showing here are MSRP as of the last couple of days. All right, so they have a few more plans. One is unlimited because people use these for tracking, and the unlimited allows you an unlimited number of tracking messages going out. There's various costs depending on which plan. What I'm going to compare at the end are the basic plans, the least expensive plans. The way I tend to use mine is keep them off and only turn them on when I need them. I'm flying with ADS-B out, so somebody can find me, my track, if I'm truly disabled. The next one is the Garmin InReach. Again, that's the one I have. It uses the Iridium system and then GEOS, like the spots do. No homing beacon, no strobe. Same way with the last spot that we saw. It allows text messaging through your phone because it has Bluetooth, and the latest version has USB-C, which seems like everything's going to, even Apple is being forced to go to USB-C. It's much more robust than the other systems. So this is just a few pieces of information that come with the device, I think in a hard card, plastic card, of what you need to do. It's pretty simple. You press and hold the SOS button. They're all like that. And if you need to cancel it, you just press and hold the SOS button again. And then you're getting these text messages. You can see on the right side, those three screens is what you're going to see on the screen. And it's giving you information back, and you can reply to them. And Chris did have a situation where he needed to use that functionality. So here are the three different plans, and each of them have a first, second, and third layer. Garmin's website is not very handy. I think they sell so many products that there are times when you have to really dig to find some of the information. Spot, because they only have a few items, it's much easier to navigate. So hopefully I've got some of this stuff right. So, obviously it goes all the way down to $250 a month. I don't think any of us are going to get into that plan. But obviously the essential one, which is a 12 months out of the year you got to buy into, the Pro plan does have the ability to do flex, which means you can turn it on and off. But there's an upfront, to get into that plan, there's an upfront cost. And once you're in it forever. All right, I don't expect you to read these things. If you look up, again, my link on the bottom of the page, if you really want to read this in detail, you'll be able to read these things, because it's talking about the different plans. There's the consumer plan, what it comes with, how many text messages or weather requests you can get for free, and a cost if you get asked for some more. It also says right down at the bottom, and I don't know if you can read this, it says photo and voice messages, neither of which, this is coming off their website, neither of those things go through that InReach Mini. So I don't know. It doesn't have a camera, that's for sure. So I don't know exactly how that works. Maybe if you use your phone, you can take a picture and send it through it. I don't know. So the Pro plan, I'm not going to go through it. The Team plan has a lot of check marks because a lot of things are unlimited, included with the plan, and they don't nickel and dime you. Okay, so the next thing here is going over these response centers. And this is the critical element, because ultimately when you press that SOS button on whatever device you got, you want somebody to wake up and send somebody to save you. The one I talked earlier about, it took him 4 hours to find him. And so is there any way for you to, once you use and trigger the system, they're going to contact the rescue forces. And we're going to go over a little bit more information about this. But you don't exactly know who they're going to get to come out to you. And I could find no information, no statistics. Was it the local police? Was it the fire brigade? Was it Civil Air Patrol? Was it just some volunteer? And that could be fine as long as you get out of there. All right, so let's go through it a little bit. This is the SARSAT system. It works with the PLB, and there's a transponder that's on the bottom there. I'm sorry, a ELT on the bottom there, that yellow thing in the middle. It started back in 1982 by the US, UK, Canada, and the USSR, believe it or not. It's a network of 54 satellites that are both in geosynchronous orbit, which means that they stop and they're hovering over a particular place in the world, and they just sit there. And low Earth orbit, which are the Starlink satellites, that move around and continuously cross over different areas of the world. So it probably covers more territory that way. I don't know. I'm not a satellite expert. But it does say that there's 43 different countries that are signed up for this program. That's why I initially bought a POB, and I might be convinced to carry both. That's what happened to that bad accident that I showed you. He had both these devices. I don't know which one he triggered. All right, so you can see some statistics there, and the last statistics I could find was 2022. They rescued over 3,000 people. So it's pretty impressive. I also noticed that only 1/3 of the rescues was aviation, so we must be doing something better. So there's a center out in Maryland, and it's run by the Air Force. And so the story is one of my friends turned on inadvertently his ELT. And his wife got a call from a sergeant at the resource center, the mission control center, saying, "Do you know where your husband is?" Which is a little scary. Now, they could tell that he was still up in the air and still flying, so they knew it wasn't really an emergency, and they figured it was a false alarm, but they had to fill in the boxes. And so they ended up that the guy's son told the control center, the mission control center, to contact the TRACON at Salt Lake City to contact an airliner to get on 123.3 or 123.5, I don't remember which one it was, and finally got a hold of the pilot and said, "Hey, you got your ELT going on," so he landed, and then filled out a NASA report afterwards because he did that.
It was 123.3.
Okay, and now he's identified himself as the person that it happened to. An airline pilot, he's an ATP. You would think he wouldn't do such things. In any case, Anatomy of a Rescue talks about how the beacon in 406 goes up to the satellites, et cetera, and then it says the search and rescue forces are then sent to find you. PLBs were first for marine use, and they're called EPIRBs. And the idea is if you are in the middle of the ocean and it gets wet, it starts advertising on satellite. So, and I'm sure it came out of military need at one point or another. The Mission Control Center, we talked about. Here's some of the satellites. This is a better view. Some of those are GEOS, which is geosynchronous satellites, and some of them are not, but they all are, and there's a lot of GPS satellites, which are low Earth orbit satellites. That's why when you put up your device to find a GPS signal, it takes a while because it doesn't know which satellites are overhead. So, and just for information, if anybody is using this, there's some links to learn about it overall, the land-based, the maritime, U.S. Coast Guard handles that one, and phone numbers down there, and just in case you accidentally activate your beacon, I don't know who would do that. And so you can call them right away and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that." So now let's get into the response center for the personal satellite messengers I've got written here. So Spot uses Globalstar, which is the Starlink system, and Garmin uses the Iridium system, which was first designed by Motorola. And then they both feed into the same worldwide system. I don't know that there's another system that does GEOS functionality. I did talk with some people that work at GEOS, and they have 24-hour by 7 by 365 coverage, and can contact nearly every country in the world and start a search and rescue operation. This is their I want to say propaganda, that's the wrong word, but this is how they describe themselves here. I'm certainly not going to read this. They're based in Houston, Texas, but they have coordinated rescue operations in 160 different countries. That's kind of amazing. I guess I didn't know we had 160 countries. And again, the phone number's at the bottom in case you ever get in a situation where you want to call them and ask them some questions, but you would contact either Spot or you'd contact Garmin if you had a question specifically about your device. So the Geo system, member benefits, they have 911 monitoring in your basic, all these devices, no matter which service contract you have, will do emergency search and rescue. There's no upcharge for that unless it's the cost of the actual rescue. So the other thing I might add to this at some point in time is some of the insurance companies that would insure you if you had to be airlifted out of someplace, because it could get pretty pricey. Garmin also, the last one was how Spot talks about their member benefits with Geos. Garmin says basically the same thing, maintaining two-way text messaging with Geos 24/7. Whenever, wherever, the Geos team will stay in communication with you and until your situation is resolved. I've only talked with a few people that have actually used it, and Chris here used it, and it was not aviation related. It was him hiking the backcountry with his wife. This shows the sequence of events as it goes from you triggering it to Geos finding it and responding to Geos confirming it with you. Now they can't do that with the Spot, the Spot that doesn't have a screen. There's, as far as I know, there's no way to get that confirmation. If they don't get a confirmation, they're still going to do a search and rescue. They update, they ask them questions. If they can get more information from you, they contact your mother, I guess, right here, or your wife, but it says mom, to get more information about the person being rescued, so they can pass that on to the search and rescue people. Again, they're communicating directly with friends and family, and until they get done with the rescue. They do not stop monitoring this until the search and rescue team gives them the all clear. Just the bottom line here is personal locator beacons and ELTs go through the SARSAT system, which is run by governments around the world. The personal satellite communicators, it's GEOs. And as far as I know, all the devices in these categories manufactured by whomever use these two sources. So now I'm going to get into some comparisons and conclusions so you can compare these things. I've gone through a lot of stuff, and remembering what was good and bad in one thing and lining it up with another is a little difficult. So what I did is I pumped in, this is all the specifications, and I said, well, which one's better? Now, better is very just me thinking which is better. And the size, it would be the smallest one, right? So I went through them all just to line up with red boxes here, which had the best functionality. The PLB has the best water resistance. It's got a strobe, the other ones don't. This is information for you so you can choose which you think is better for yourself. Again, you might want to get both. That saved the bacon of the fellow I talked about with the accident. External power, there is no in the PLB because it's got an internal battery that works for 5 years. ELTs, is their battery also good for 5 years? Okay. And then you're mandated to replace them after that time, or if you've used them. Bluetooth pairing, the Spot X and the InReach Mini has that, so you can connect it to a phone. You notice on messaging, I have a yellow or orange box because this RLS system is just a receive conversation or confirmation, and you get a light that lights up. That's in a PLB. That's it. That's the only thing you know that the message has been received by SARSAT. The PLB has better power to get to the satellites. I don't know if that's important. Really, I don't. There's so many satellites in low Earth orbit and geosynchronous orbit. Maybe 1 watt is just fine. Less than 1 watt, actually. Subscription is required in some, but not in the PLB. And battery life is better because in other cases, you either have to charge it. I charge mine every night. I pull out my batteries, I charge them overnight, and I charge my inReach. And then the satellite system, maybe the geosynchronous is better. I really don't have any metrics on that. So the other one, it has to do with messaging and tracking capabilities. The PLB does not have any of those things. It does have that RLS-1 message coming back that lights an LED that says they received the message. But otherwise, if you want tracking, you need to go to either the Spot or the inReach. And initially, I have a friend that got one of the early Spots just to have his wife be able to keep an eye on him, a spot on him, I guess. But it just minimized her fears that she could look up on a website and find out how he was flying and what he was doing. And it also mentions here you can select the different tracking every 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 30 minutes or 60 minutes, whichever you like, but there's an additional cost for the tracking that is more often. And lastly, here's the cost profile. So what I did is I said, okay, here, let's just talk the basic system just to get you off the ground. And what I looked at is, again, which one's the cheapest, basically. And then what would be the cheapest after 5 years? You know, I'm conflicted on this because you're trying to buy a device that's going to save your bacon. Is cost truly important? The difference between $150 for a Spot, which is the cheapest, or $400 for the inReach Mini, or $485 for the PLB, you're probably going to spend. I think your significant others would probably like you to spend a few extra dollars for that. But I thought I'd go through. Now what I did is the pros and cons of this. It's really neutral about the SARSAT system versus the GEO system. I think they're both as capable. They ultimately, I think they get to the same people to try to find you wherever you may be. But there's, the idea that there's a con with the PLB that you're not necessarily going to know what's happening in the background. You are going to get an act that things are happening, but you don't get that feedback. And if it's 4 hours later, like my one friend had, that could be worrisome. Obviously, you don't know what's happening until the people come. You see dust in the distance. The personal satellite comms are lower power to save batteries. I get that. Is the higher power important? I put it as a positive. To get to the most satellites, I suppose it is. The strobe is important. That's one of the things that really leans me back to PLBs. Having that strobe, because it may take into the nighttime for somebody to find you. There are strobes that you can buy that looks like a flashlight. Exactly, and they're not particularly expensive. So I have one, and I'll show you basically what I carry on my parachute. So at this point, I'll stop for a minute and see if there's any questions, and I'll go into a couple other points. Go ahead.
You brought up earlier that if you're broadcasting on ADSB, somebody can track.
True enough. If you have ADSB out, which is becoming more popular, it's kind of expensive. ADSB in is less expensive. You get a FLARM, you get some sort of display device, but buying a TT22 trig and getting the satellite, and if it's TSO, it's twice as expensive. Yeah, I was talking with Jeff just last night, and I was saying I keep my Spot off. Well, Jeff says, what happens if you're knocked out? You're unconscious. You can't turn it on. Nobody can, if you're not have tracking, no one knows where you are. But because I have ADSB out and they know my tail number, they should be able to find at least where I am close, hopefully. All these devices we talked about, except for the ELT, is manual trigger only. I'm kind of surprised, but I think the lesson learned with the ELTs is they falsely trigger. They didn't want that in the other stuff. So another question?
Yeah, I didn't hear his question. It might be the same one, but if you've got a modest transponder with ADSB out, you've got a Garmin inReach, do you need an ELT? Or is that overkill?
Yes.
It's overkill?
No, it's not overkill.
You said yes.
ELTs are required in some civil aviation aircraft, and Jeff and I were looking at the exceptions of that. If it's a single seat, if it's like our Pawnees, if it's close in, within 50 miles, I think it was, of your home airport. I'm sorry?
Training flights.
Training flights.
Within 50 nautical.
I got you. Okay.
I was thinking about a combination of ADSB out and PLD. ADSB out, particularly through terrain, there might be a certain distance between losing radar contact
Sure.
and then where you end up. But they'll at least get search and rescue close, and then they can start working off it.
True enough. Another question?
Do you have any experience with the new iPhones that have the satellite communications?
You mean this?
Yeah.
No, none whatsoever. I'm an Android guy, and I'm sure the Google crowd are trying to figure out how to get this done. This was just announced recently, and and from what I hear, it's free for right now, at least. So it's interesting. I think we're going to get more and more devices that. I saw a hand go up back there.
Kind of his comment, I think you have to carefully evaluate the circumstances and how you're triggering and holding the alert. And in the worst case scenario, which is the scenario you really want it to work in, you're going to be looking really at ELTs, because regardless of whether you have a modest ADSB out transponder on your ship, there's no guarantee, A, that they got that signal because you may have been so low that it's shielded from the receiving station. And B, when you ultimately crash into the side of the mountain and you're unconscious, they're just going to see a lost signal. They're not going to get an alert. And that's the fundamental problem with any of the other locator things. It presupposes that you're healthy enough after an event.
And absolutely positively get the newest variety of ELT with the 406 that communicates with satellites and gets to the SARSAT.
And your environment, there's a world of difference between Ely, Nevada, and Elmira, New York.
True enough. So it also depends on where you're flying and what you think you need to do. So go ahead.
Yeah, just a comment on the 406. In my situation, post-flight, I called the AFRCC to kind of learn something, because I was under the impression that with the 406, the satellite passes over, gets the signal, and gives you lat-long coordinates. He said, normally that's the case, but the area that I was flying in had a lot of high terrain and variable terrain. And he said it gives them a much larger search area or location area. So there was a lot of uncertainty on their end as to where I was. So just because it's a 406 doesn't really mean that it's going to locate you real quickly.
I have to wonder about that statement because you're looking at a GPS satellite above you, so terrain shouldn't matter. There's so many of them up there. But in any case, take it for what it's worth. Any other questions? One more. Go ahead.
It's not a question, it's just sharing what our club does. So before you go in our club and you go cross country, we have to fill out a land out card. But on there, we require you to put any communication device you have that we may be able that will either transmit a position or that we can reach you on. So all the links for your spots or whatever that go to certain web addresses and stuff, you have to list that stuff. Phone numbers of your phone, everything, so that we have a complete picture of any way to find you and communicate.
And this is your home glider port club. And it's not, and during a contest, you said land out card, and I thought it would be during a contest.
Well, yeah, it's during contests and events where people come in from out of town.
I know we do in my club track and require you to state who's your emergency contact and things like that, but not to that level. That's interesting.
The days before cell phones, people classically would have a hard landing and, be on board, tie the aircraft down and go off somewhere, and meanwhile,
It's beeping away.
The search would get started and the person would be out, unable to be gotten hold of.
406 is going to be not better at, I don't know. I have, in the latest ELTs, if we don't have any talks after this, so we can go as long as we want. But do the latest and greatest ELTs, have they somehow corrected the false triggers? I don't know.
I was going to add that to what this called I actually have a packet, an envelope that I keep in my vehicle, which I leave at the glider port. It has a complete packet of rescue information in it. It includes what I have for survival equipment and signaling devices and things like that, so that in the event they're looking for me, they know what they're also looking for. That I have a strobe, I have fluorescent markers, what color my parachute is, things like that may aid search and rescue and locate you, because your wreckage may be 5 miles away.
And you leave your car keys connected.
I leave my car keys in the car, yes.
Right. Because I have a little card that says, if you got to come get me, this is what you need to bring and not bring. And I always attach it to my car keys. So, and it's only happened once, I think. Okay, so the other thing I mentioned is, ADSB. I'll just glance on that. Does it add anything? Certainly it adds tracking, but you can't really, if you bail out, well, your ADSB is gone. You can't take it with you if you're going to walk out. So it's just one more, somebody asked the question, so I put some information in there. So here's what I like. I don't know, does anybody have any of these smack packs? One person back there. They're well built. It's made by Alan Silver. It's not only got a zipper, but it's got a Velcro strap with buttons. It does not come off your parachute. You can see the stuff that I'm able to put in it. There's the $50 does not come with you buy the kit, by the way. You can see the strobe at the top there. It also comes with that hook thing in the middle, which is to cut your shrouds if you're stuck in a tree. And it's on a lanyard, so you don't end up dropping it and then get stuck in the tree for your next couple hours. And I carry two. The other one, this is an earlier picture that had the Acer, and now I've got my mini InReach in there. And they're just on either strap, either side. If you ever can watch the video of Alan Silver talking about jumping out of aircraft, because he's a master rigger, and he came to Chicago at one of our seminars and spoke to us. Interesting guy, and he keeps making these now in retirement. And no, leave a note. If you walk away from the ship, I leave a note. And also the instructions on how to use the electronic device that's in there. So you can buy these things. I don't know exactly which kit that Paul Rimdy has. Cumulus Soaring sells them, and he's got them out on the floor. They're not very expensive, and they're certainly the best way to carry something on you. I just need to find dehydrated water, so I can find that, put that in there. Tracking information. There's some other things, I'm only on slide 80, so there's another 31 slides beyond this on different topics and whatnot, but I won't go over that. Any more questions? You want me to go back to a slide and look at something, or? I got 14 minutes? We were only 45 altogether. Yeah, so we're all over time, but it's okay because nobody else is after us. So I saw a hand all the way to the back.
Just to add about the Apple SOS, it does, you get a lot of false positives from that too. I have one of my friends who has now called me twice via the dropped it hard enough that it called her, that it called and said that she'd had an accident. And then another one, it was the same sort of thing. Her phone called from inside of her bag. So it's, you get some false positives with it, but
As I understand it, the iPhone has the ability to know that you have fallen, and then it triggers calling somebody. But the SOS part of it is different in that it sends a signal to the satellite, and you can text through the satellite and whatnot, and get. But who do they get a hold of? Is it just your friends, or does it get a hold of? I'm sorry.
It calls the police, and it calls the local police station here.
Oh, it does a 911 call with your GPS information.
Yeah, because she was in the basement of her, in her parking garage. That's in the basement of her apartment building, and so she didn't have cell service down there. And so she did end up getting it. It called everything. No one could call her and get a hold of her to tell her where she was. But the text message that I received as her emergency contact did give me at least a general location of where she was, which happened to be inside of her building.
It gets worse. Apple Watch will do that if he's trying to open a ketchup bottle. And it'll automatically, false, calling 911.
Oh, I've made pocket calls. I've made pocket videos. I left a message for my son-in-law of 32 minutes. He heard all sorts of stuff, so it happens. Hard landing will trigger. Oh, okay. Any other questions? Did you find this valuable? So if you go to the website that's down here, there's lots of different presentations on lots of different topics, on FLARMs, on oxygen systems. What else have I got? How to wire up your aircraft if you're going to rebuild your instrument panel. How to play with your airlines and getting them fixed or figure out which line goes where. Lots of different ones. So enjoy. Thank you very much.